So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I am incredibly excited to welcome Senator Lauren Kuby to the event, and also Stacey Champion. And one of the first things I do to get started is always to ask our guests to introduce themselves a little bit. And I love hearing about the journeys that have brought people to this time and place. So, Senator Kuby, why don't you go? Why don't you start?
Sure. Well, I'm the state senator from LD8, Legislative District 8, and that encompasses half of Tempe, half of Scottsdale, parts of Mesa, parts of Phoenix, and the entirety of the Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian community. So, a very vast, geographically vast district, very progressive district, I would say. And in the heart of my district is Arizona State University, where I worked for 25 years. I'm a global future scientist, a senior global future scientist. I still have that title, though I did leave the university in early 2023. And I was a long time, I did community outreach for the Global Institute of Sustainability Innovation, and I led the Stardust Center for Affordable Homes and the Family. But I've always been a politico. I've always been an activist, a climate activist, especially. I got my start when I was a baby, when JFK came into the volunteer office in Holbrook, Massachusetts, and south of Boston, and surprised my parents, who were the only volunteers there. And and the rest is history. My dad ran to get him coffee, and there's no coffee place in Holbrook, so he had to make coffee in a percolator. So in the meantime, 45 minutes, my mom was alone with JFK. I used to tease her about that. And he said, "Can I hold your baby? She's the same age as Caroline, and I miss my baby so much on the campaign trail." So he held me and did the gitchy gitchy goo. And from that point on, my family said, "You're going to be the political one." And it's exactly what happened. Um, so I've engaged in a lot of campaigns. I did Camp Obama training, and I went to 6 states for Barack Obama and helped elect a lot of people. I've been an LD chair. Um, and primarily my focus as a council member, two-term council member in Tempe, has been the climate movement and climate solutions. And that's my bread and butter. Of course, disappointed that we live in a state that's like taking steps backwards, isn't necessarily willing to move, but to me, it's an urgent crisis that must be addressed. And I'm just very glad to be here and love to take all the questions.
Great. Stacey, can you please do the same?
Sure. My name is Stacey Champion. I've lived in Arizona since 1998. My track was um, Minnesota, which is my home state. I lived in Chicago. I lived in LA. I lived in Maui, but Arizona since 1998. I lived up north for the first 8 years and then have been here in Phoenix for the rest of that time. Um, I currently have a public relations and consulting firm that I've had for, oh my gosh, almost 15 years now, which is insane. And prior to that, and going back, knowing Lauren from ASU 3 years ago, prior to that, I owned an environmental consulting firm for about 10 years, and my area of expertise was indoor air and environmental quality. But I have been also involved in broad, holistic sustainability issues for my whole life, even as a teenager, and have paid very close attention to politics and the Corporation Commission, who we're going to talk about tonight. All of the years I've lived here in Arizona, and have also been begrudgingly politically active, I will say. Um, I really enjoy policy. I don't like politics so much, but I am proud to admit to helping our fabulous Arizona Attorney General win by 280 votes in the last election cycle. So, and have worked with her also quite closely over a lot of years as well. So, thank you for having me. Some of you might know me for taking on our state's largest multi-billion-dollar utility monopoly some years ago, APS, and that was quite the battle. And then I've just kind of watchdog them quite a lot. I've brought a lot of attention to heat deaths and just a lot of kind of broad holistic sustainability issues happening and how they all interconnect. Lots of love projects.
Stacey, you forgot to mention how we met over the plastic bag ban when I tried to ban single-use plastic.
I think we met before that, but
Well, that's when we became intimate.
that's when we really tackled that together. Yeah. So it was the plastic bag ban.
Yeah, right.
Some
Well, that was
yeah.
from Bisbee, I believe, because they passed that that ordinance, and the legislature was like, not on our watch. You know, the more plastic, the better. So anyway,
Yeah.
yeah, crazy. Oh,
Mm.
Arizona. So let's sort of frame the conversation by talking about some of the a little background on energy utilization in Arizona, who the key players are, just so we sort of know before we dig into some of the details what what we're talking about. So, which of you would like to jump in on that?
You start, Stacey.
Okay, sure. So, um, well, the Arizona Corporation Commission is known as our fourth branch of government here. And it was set up at a time when there were kind of barren railroads and things like that. And so they were really set up by the in the Arizona Constitution to be the check and balance for everyday people. And so that was kind of the function and the purpose of the commission getting set up. I think they were at one point 3 members, and then not so many years ago, really increased to 5 members. Um, in my time in the state, it's always, kind of leaned heavily Republican. But I will say when Chris Mays, now our current Attorney General, is a former corporation commissioner, and at the time she was a Republican, Bill Mundell also, they are actually the two people who co-authored our state's first and only renewable energy standard, which is now being walked back. And so, though the commission has kind of leaned Republican in the past, there have been some good Republicans doing good things for the environment over the course of its history, too. In my personal opinion, without getting too in the weeds, this is by far the most captured commission that I've ever seen in all of the years I've lived here. But so they are in charge of setting our utility rates for the regulated utilities. SRP, who is in provides the power in Lawrence District, I believe a lot of it,
Yeah.
more of a quasi-governmental entity. And so the only time they're going in front of the commission is for line sighting and some other things like that, but they are not regulated. And so the Corporation Commission that is the entity that sets our utility bills broadly. So I don't know how much I kind of went off track, but
I think that's great. I think it's important to note that, APS, Arizona Public Service, is the largest monopoly utility in the state, followed by SRP, which has I think 3.4% solar in its portfolio, and then TEP. And, SRP ostensibly has a board that regulates it, but it doesn't. It's dominated by farmers. And we've been gradually gaining seats on that board. So it's like six solar advocates versus 8 fossil fuel advocates, I guess you'd say, on the SRP board. But like what you say is right. ACC, it's the fourth branch of government. When I ran for Corporation Commission in 2022, I referred to it as the most important office that no one's ever heard of. And last year, I tried to get a law passed to change the name of the Corporation Commission to more accurately reflect its purpose and call it the Corporation and Utility Commission.
And in most other states, they're known as PUCs, like
Mhm.
public utility commissions.
Mhm.
So I do think it's a little confusing for people. I don't think people have been a little more so over the past maybe 5 years, but not as engaged as we really need to be. And then people also need to, in my opinion, stop voting against their own best interests. But
There's that.
Well, the three main utilities are APS, SRP, and Tucson Electric Power. Is that TEP? About how much of the state does that cover? And how many utilities do you have any idea how many utilities cover the rest of the state? Any that are not covered by those three?
Well, that's just electric you're talking about. There's also rural electric co-ops, which are democratically elected, but usually don't have the money to do as much investment in renewable energy. And so that sort of encompasses entirety of the state. I don't know if I could give a percentage for the monopoly, for all of the utilities, TEP and SRP and APS all together. I want to say like 90%. Is that accurate, Stacey?
That's so TEP, their parent company is Fortis, which is I believe they're a Canadian company. So they also there's Unisource, and then there are a large number of electric co-ops who are regulated.
Mhm.
There, I believe, are still some municipal utilities floating around out there. And then
Mhm.
there's like the skip one that is federal that you've seen a lot of news on, that people's power going out and things like that. And that's a whole nother can of worms. But it's as far as the regulated utilities go, kind of the main players and then of course there's Southwest Gas too. But so kind of the main biggies would be on the CorpCom regulated side would be APS, TEP, and Southwest Gas, I would say, and then SRP over here.
Okay.
And then, like I said, TEP also has like Unisource, and there's all the co-ops too.
Mhm.
Okay, good. I just wanted to, so we will, for the purposes of this conversation, we'll probably talk about the three main utilities, but I am sure that there are people on the call who live in other areas. And so I just wanted to make sure we have the opportunity to address if they have any questions. Um, so the Corporation Commission, um, talk a little bit, maybe Stacey, you can talk about what do they do? How, when you say they're captured, what does that really mean? What sort of considerations, what the people that affect people's lives directly? I mean, utility rates, obviously, that affects people very directly, but I think the reason I really wanted to have this conversation is also to look at our future. How are we charting the course? So what role does the Corporation Commission play in all of that, sort of establishing our energy direction and also regulating what we have today?
So in a massive way. And some years ago now, there was a lot of speculation that APS was paying and putting money into the campaigns of those who regulate them. It then kind of finally the truth came to the surface that they had indeed spent millions upon millions of dark money dollars into regulating or into buying those commissioners, getting those commissioners in place, who are supposed to be regulating them, right? That is what they are elected to do. They're elected to regulate these monopoly utilities. And so that actually had to do with the APS rate hike just prior to my complaint against it, because that set of commissioners, minus Bob Burns, who was extremely outspoken about it, all rubber stamped this massive rate hike that was said and advertised to be a 4.5% increase. But over the course of my insane complaint, we proved all kinds of things. We proved that wasn't true. We proved that's when it came out that they had been spending money. APS then came in and said, we won't spend money on these elections anymore. Most of the candidates tend to run clean, but the utilities still massively meddle in pollution or in with politicians. They give millions of dollars uh, to all kinds of things politically. Their tentacles are kind of everywhere, but they have eh, over that course of that time, they kind of backed away from their regulators. When I say that this current commission is captured, I mean it's because they have been rubber stamping every rate hike in front of them. The chairman is a former longtime Southwest Gas lobbyist, actually, which is kind of surprising to a lot of people. But just Chair Thompson and Vice Chair Myers, whose seats are going to be up for reelection here, just in their tenure, they have rubber stamped close to $7 million in rate hikes, and that's annually, just since they've been there for people, which is, I mean, as everybody here knows, like our bills are too damn high. Like,
Yeah. So yeah, in 2023, we saw 8% rate increase, 2024, 8% rate increase with ACC, sorry, with APS. And then this year they're asking for 14%. So that's undoubtedly going to be approved. So that means 30% rate increase over 3 years. And,
another
utility
like $6 million, I think. Over $6 million.
and
And what is
people,
their justification for that?
well, they'll probably say data centers, but it's interesting because SRP raised its rates, but it raised the rates disproportionately on the residential class and not the commercial class, which is the class that's a service that's seeing a great increase in energy needs, right? So we're often seeing that across the country where data centers are, the cost of that is disproportionately impacting residential ratepayers. So, I mean, they'll give all sorts of reasons, but we know like this has been a huge to past 4 weeks in energy history in Arizona. We've seen the Arizona Corporation Commission decide they're going to take a vote. They voted to repeal the renewable energy standard and tariff. It's called the REST. And that tariff, which you mentioned before, Stacey, was brought about by Bill Mundell and Chris Mays. We love to call her the grandmother of the renewable energy standard. But if it's eliminated, we'll be one of the very few states that doesn't have a renewable energy standard. And that standard, plus the energy efficiency standard, goals towards energy efficiency, have saved, given $2 billion in benefits to Arizona ratepayers and caused untold, I don't know how many billions of dollars in investment in clean energy and energy transition. So,
Water savings. And just as an FYI for everyone, they're going after energy efficiency next. And energy efficiency is one of the things we know can help lower people's bills. Like that is a no-brainer. And that is actually on the upcoming open meeting at CorpCom. And so I just saw a video where Myers is literally making fun of the utilities for doing tree planting thing, giving residents trees to plant. And it's like, well, that shade can help lower somebody's energy costs too. So, I mean, it's a little out of control. And then the other thing is there have been meetings with investors by the commissioners, just a lot of really untoward things that commissioners of the past would have never dreamed of doing.
Mhm.
It's just there's some very blatant conflicts of interest, and they just seem out of control, and like
Yeah.
they
One
just
of
don't
the,
care.
yeah, we had, I mean, three of the seats were up last year. And
Mhm.
sadly, none of the clean energy candidates won, which was very disappointing. But because I was giving some presentations around the state, I ran into the candidate several times, and I was fascinated by some of the information that they gave. And one of the stats that really hit me was, and I don't remember the exact numbers, but that people who are whose energy is supplied by companies that are regulated by the CorpCom are actually paying a huge amount more for their electricity than those who are getting their energy from non-regulated, which is sort of the flip of the way it should be in
Yeah.
my understanding.
Well, I
So
think
is that
in
accurate?
in a perfect world, life-saving utilities wouldn't be profit driven, first of all. But yeah, actually, I know there are a lot of areas in Phoenix that uh, actually if you own a property that was part of the original SRP property, you can fill out this application, and if you overpaid APS, they actually refund you money.
Mhm.
Can't think of exactly what it's called right now, but so yes, I think they're in part trying to play catch up a little bit, but I think it's important for everyone to remember that monopoly utilities make money by building things, by building infrastructure. So even with this data center stuff, a lot of what we're seeing is speculative, right? Like a lot of the planned data centers and things like that are speculative. But utilities make money from us
Mhm.
building things. And the cost of building a new natural gas plant is going to be probably more expensive than doing solar and battery storage
Mhm.
at the utility scale. So it behooves the utilities to overbuild things because they make money from us when they do that.
Mhm.
Right.
I think a lot of
Mhm.
people don't understand.
And when we import all that gas, mostly from Texas, and this new pipeline that APS and SRP investing in, there's a lot of water wastage. There's a lot of energy wastage. There's extreme price volatility with gas. And so the idea that it's going to somehow save people money is just belied by past history when you see gas expansion and what happens to energy bills. Um, One little fun fact that your watchers, your viewers may not know is there are more utility lobbyists in Arizona than there are legislators. So think about that. I mean, they have lobbyists on the city council side, on with chambers of commerce all throughout rural communities, and they buy favors by paying for different events that a city would hold, or an awards, or a youth celebration of youth, and they put a lot of money into the community using ratepayer money. What do they get in return? Even there's a lot of Democrats that will not really that will give the utilities whatever they want when they come to the legislature and ask for special favors. And that is
Mhm.
deeply disturbing to me. That's why I, as a candidate and many others, like refuse to take fossil fuel money. We should not be influenced by this overwhelming force of lobbyists that are invade the Capitol and invade our city councils.
Yeah, I remember hearing about how many utility lobbyists were there when there was a discussion about the bill that I know the Sierra Club called the bill that lets APS burn your house down. So
Mm,
it's to limit their liability in case
right.
their wires, start a fire. And that was very concerning, to say the least.
Yeah, there were a couple of those bills this past session. There was the
Oh,
wildfire
yeah.
bill, and then
And
the
the
other one was
securitization bill, yeah.
Mhm.
Oof.
yeah. And then one of the other
Um,
bad things that this current commission did too is they crammed through what are known as formula rates. And so formula rate making, will basically, like, the utilities, they make a formula of what can get plugged into this formula, and then this formula gets set, and then every year for 5 years or whatever it is, they will just get automatic increases, without a lot of public transparency. The timeframes that they have set around doing it for everyone to kind of analyze what they're asking for is very short. And what this commission has done is they've quashed a lot of ability for public to be engaged. They have decreased transparency. I was just reading in for the upcoming open meeting, there's some really kind of interesting things tied to pipeline safety, which I think we should all be paying attention to right now with all these kind of new pipelines getting ready to come into the state. And one of the things that was concerning to me that I need to dig into a little bit more was that they want to give the Corporation Commission staff the discretion of the company having to provide a written report if there's an incident. And
Mhm.
that's insane. So there's going to have to be just like a lot to watch. And I just can't help but comment on one of the comments about asking how much influence and change can happen by public comment and open meeting comments. And I don't know that you're going to sway this commission, but I think a lot can be done, with the media and just with public pressure. I was heavily involved in getting our disconnect rules across the finish line by finding and helping to expose the shutoff death of APS customer Stephanie Pullman, which is why we have some disconnect rules. So I think, and I know that a lot of these issues are just so massive, and we get so, bogged down in thinking like, oh, what can I do? I'm just one person. But one person who is organizing and finding other people and showing up, can make a difference,
Mhm.
especially if
Yeah, we
a pit
believe
bull.
that thoroughly.
And
Mhm.
Stacey's
Absolutely.
been that person. She's going to be humble, but she has brought incredible attention to all of this. And, Joe Dana on Channel 12 News, too, he does a remarkable job. He's a true investigative journalist in uncovering some of the more unsavory elements of energy politics in Arizona. So pay attention to Joe Dana as well.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, these are sometimes not the sexiest of issues, and it's really hard to get people to pay attention. But I completely agree, and that is why I wanted to have this conversation, frankly, because we need more people paying attention to this. And, I want to talk very much about the fact that the CorpCom is starting to walk back, as you said, or repeal these sustainable energy standards. And one of the things my mind is boggled by, I mean, in Arizona, we have so much sun. Why are we not a national leader in solar energy? And the entire obstacle seems to be the Corporation Commission. So why are they repealing what was frankly a very modest goal? Can you speak to that? What justification are they giving?
I think they would give the justification that because of data centers and AI, they need to go back and expand gas. When I was running for Corporation Commission, the the APS folks said, we are not in the business of gas expansion anymore. That didn't turn out to be true with SRP, but now, APS is going back on their word, and they're expanding heavily into gas. They'd like to blame data centers. They would like to blame AI. But if you look, I've been researching this extensively because I'm working with a group of municipal and elected officials and folks from Ukraine on data center policies and trying to develop a community toolkit so communities know exactly where to look and what sort of benefits to demand to mitigate the risk and if you or turn them away. But data centers use an enormous amount of water and energy, and they would like to give that excuse. And actually, in a Morrison Institute event last month, APS spokesman said to me, well, this has happened so quickly with data centers. We need to go back and we need to take away our renewable energy goal and we need to go back and expand gas. And they said it was very recent, which is why they couldn't be transparent about how this decision happened. And I scratched my head because they've been considering all of this since 2008. It's not as if data centers have been an unknown. And our state of Arizona has been incentivizing data centers to come into the state for, I don't know, a decade or more. And then we offer all these state and local tax exemptions, right? So, it's really wrong-headed. And there's ways that you can build policy and legislation around data centers that requires, like, if you're going to build a renewable energy, if you're going to build a data center, it has to be fueled by renewable energy. End of story, right? You have to use the most advanced water saving policies and procedures. So, I think it's more of an excuse. I think, like what Stacey was saying, that they'd rather, it's better for them economically to invest in these large scale infrastructures that they'll just make more of a profit that way. Solar has a lot less maintenance and operations. It's not as profitable for them. They don't want to see distributed generation because they want to be able to, control all of that. When we know distributed generation actually builds resilience into systems, we need more of it. We need more rooftop solar. We need more net metering.
Community solar too, which they've also pretty much crushed this current commission.
Mhm.
One of the things that really surprised me when I was reading a little bit about the whole sustainability and solar and wind opportunity is that Texas is actually one of the leaders in the country in building renewable energy, and they get a significant amount of their energy from solar and particularly from wind. And it has I had not known prior to the big ice storm a number of years ago that they are disconnected from the national grid as a state, and that's one of the reasons why they have had huge fluctuations in energy costs and also breakdowns, frankly, because they have no real backup. But building sustainable energy has actually allowed them to smooth out a lot of those fluctuations. And of all the states, I did not expect to be progressive in this way. Texas is definitely one.
What's really sad is that they have there's just been such a this issue has become politicized when it shouldn't
Mhm.
be like it isn't partisan, right? Like we all pay energy bills. I don't think there's anybody out there in any corner of the state that if you walked up to them and said, "Do you think your energy bills are too high?" You're
Yeah.
find me somebody who's going to be like, "No, like I pay just enough," right? And it's so unfortunate, and it's just it's so unnecessary, but also like here we are, right? And the fossil fuel industry has so much more money to feed into misinformation campaigns, to fearmonger. I mean, we're seeing that happen now massively. Everybody is like, oh, we don't want to have brownouts, and we don't want to have this, and we don't want to have that. And it's like, the storage technology is caught up. Like that technology is not new at this
Mhm.
point. But unfortunately, there's still just so much misinformation and so much fear mongering, and it's a battle to, I think, to turn that corner with people. There were some women in Mojave County, Ruby Red, Mojave County, who I'm very, very proud of, Republican ladies who fought their butts off against the UNS rate hike. And they rallied that community. And actually, the mayor of Lake Havasu City, who is also Republican, he went on the record just recently uh, talking about the Trump's energy bills and talking about the impacts on that community from those rate hikes there. And I was so proud of him for doing that. And I think we have such a kind of a missed opportunity oftentimes to pull everybody to the table and just talk about it from a human being standpoint of like I can't afford, like I have to either buy groceries or pay my power bill, and that's like it's just terrible. So
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, I would want to add that the Inflation Reduction Act was bringing investment into rural communities, into red communities, and providing jobs that were good union jobs, high-paying jobs. And just to turn away from that, like even projects that are not just shovel ready, but in the midst of being developed and built, just makes no economic sense or moral sense.
Mhm.
But yeah, to invest in all all the higher cost fossil fuel infrastructure is going to hurt us in the end. And we know it was 2020, I believe, the International Energy Association announced that as a form of electricity, solar was the cheapest form of electricity in the history of the world, right? But you'll still hear our commissioners saying we need to put in nuclear power. And well, nuclear power does not rank in terms of an inexpensive investment, and it's just not ready for prime time in the way they describe it. But
Mhm.
it's a shame because it's cheaper to build a new solar plant with backup than it is to operate an existing coal plant. But they want to keep the Four Corners plant 44 miles away from our border. They want to keep that open until 2038 when it was slated to close. It's unconscionable.
Mhm. Yeah, I totally agree. The whole subject of data centers and their energy and also water consumption has really seemed to capture more public attention lately, and I wonder if that is a point of leverage. I mean, obviously in Tucson, we saw the community really come together to force the city council to disapprove the huge Amazon data center and I believe the Pima County Board of Supervisors has asked the legislature, for whatever that's worth, to repeal that tax mitigation for data centers. And data centers, I mean, if there's one thing they cannot argue, it's that they provide a lot of jobs, because they absolutely do not. There's labor involved in building them, but it's just like gigantic rooms full of mainframes essentially, and it
Mhm,
doesn't need a lot of people to run them. So they're not even good sources of ongoing employment.
mhm.
So, and yet Arizona has been such a magnet for data centers. We
They're
have,
also very polluting too. They're very
yeah.
polluting to local communities. So they tend to be located in areas of lower economic status. They tend to be located in frontline communities, and they tend to be flat buildings. Though they're perfect for solar installations, and we could make that requirement of them that they have to be renewable energy. We may not be able in this Republican-dominated legislature to get rid of the incentives to come here, but surely we can put some restrictions on it.
Mhm.
yeah, like community
Um,
benefits agreements,
Mhm.
I think would be really good. Like that would be a really good place for like the cities to start, maybe.
yeah.
I just want to address because I certainly don't want to be doom and gloom, and I see a couple of comments asking. Rick said, "In the best of worlds, it would take election cycles 4 years to flip the ACC. Do I have that right?" Yeah, so basically there's 2 seats coming up in 2026, and then there will be through the other 3 seats in 2028. Is that right? Yeah, Lauren?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Mhm.
So
There are four
No,
years
three seats.
then.
There's 3 seats in 2028.
2028, yeah, so it's
Right.
two seats in this upcoming, so, uh, Thompson and Myers, are up in 2026, and then the other 3 will be up in 2028. But it's, I think a lot of it has to do with messaging and really kind of focusing on affordability. Personally, that's my personal thoughts with it. I think that is the path forward to kind of, and then I just, it's a numbers game at the end of the day, right? With a lot of it, like the women in Mojave County I was talking about, I know at least one of them was really pushing people she knew to not vote for the Republicans just for that. So I think maybe as more people will learn, maybe they will parse out their ballots a little bit differently, but also they lie. Like I just watched a podcast that was filmed that Myers and Thompson did, and I yesterday was kind of video clipping it out because I'm gonna break it apart because I mean, they just flat out lie. And so, and that base then believes them. And
Mhm.
so there just has to be, I think, a bigger drum beating on pushing back against the lies they tell
Well,
too.
there are two things that I'd like to sort of get back to. One, Senator Kuby, you mentioned some sort of collaboration that you're developing a toolkit. Could you speak about that a little bit more? And the second thing, before I forget, is that this is not necessarily a statewide issue. I mean, it is, of course, a statewide issue, but community engagement, like at your city council or in your local area, can also be very effective. So those are two things that I wanted to get back to before I forgot.
Sure, yeah. Well, I'm part of this Elected Officials to Protect America. They're very focused on clean energy and connecting national security to energy security. So they have kind of a frame of mind that is, use a lot of secure words and about security, national security sounds kind of on the conservative side, but actually is very progressive in its intent. And so I've been working with some Ukrainian civil society actors and legislators, and then I mentioned a couple council members and two state legislators, and we're trying to develop a community toolkit how to educating community members about data centers and what their use is, water and energy uses, give sort of an overview, and talk specifically in our state about the benefits that these companies get by being a data center, so people can be aware of all of the benefits they receive. And the ultimate goal is to have a community benefit agreement that a community could work out with a data center in cooperation with the city to ensure that not only that risks are mitigated, but there can actually be some net benefits. It shouldn't just be about risk mitigation. It should be about trying to create benefits to the community. So I've been working on that, and would like to also, I'm working with Missy Epstein on some of the tax break aspects of it, trying to have some requirements in there for renewable energy if you are going to build a data center. And this isn't so much the purview of the legislature, but when you're constructing rate classes, maybe it should be a separate rate class for AI or data centers because they use an exorbitant amount of energy. So why shouldn't that business that gets all of those benefits why shouldn't they pay a higher rate? Why should it revert back to the residential class? It's just not fair. And that's what SRP did. So
The
APS,
same
they're going to do
was
better.
of water too. Sorry,
Yeah,
Lauren. I
thank
was just
you.
saying, like water too.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like
Absolutely.
they should be paying way more for water than
Mhm.
residential customers.
Yeah. But when you talk about sort of community benefit agreements, and I mean, those are opportunities for people to get involved more locally.
Mhm.
And we always like to encourage people, to take that initiative, possibly to their city council. I mean, what do you think the opportunities are for that, either of you?
Well, we saw in Tucson, it was a textbook case of citizens sort of stepping up and standing up. And unfortunately, there still could be a net result that it's built in
Yeah.
the same place or it's built in Pinal County, right? And that would be unfortunate. But I'm always of the mindset that you need to organize local communities and push back against decisions that are not helpful to that community. And I don't mean to change the subject, but we talked a lot about APS and ACC, but we do have elections coming up, the SRP board, and those will take place in April of 2026. And I don't know if your viewers know this, but SRP has the most profoundly undemocratic system for electing its board, and it's acreage-based voting. So you need to own land to vote. And the last time we had land ownership requirements for voting was in South Carolina in 1856.
Yeah.
So, I mean, acres are people too, my friend. That's what it amounts to. And I ran for a board and helped lead candidates to run for the council seats, the lower seats, and the board. And I ran in basically South Phoenix and all the way up to Levine, and I lost big because it was acreage based. But had it been a at-large district, I would have won by 75%. And we know this because that's how much our at-large candidates won in that district, right? So only less than 2% of people vote in the SRP elections, even those that can vote, and only 50% of people can actually vote in SRP elections who aren't you, because you can't be a renter. Of that, less than 2% vote. We increased the voter turnout or the voter registration by 153%, but it's just abysmal. So even people that can vote don't vote. And that's pretty disturbing. And the last
I want to proudly say I can vote and I do vote. So I'm in that percentage and I have been for quite some time.
And you should all know Turning Point USA is turning their attention to the SRP board elections, and they want to revert back. And we've won 6 out of 14 seats. We're hoping to tie it up or even gain a majority this coming year. And they are turning their attention to this race, and that's disturbing.
Very.
Thankfully, we have former Commissioner Sandra Kennedy over on the SRP board too. But it's Courtney Holmes, who used to be with ABC 15, did a very good story when she was still at ABC 15 about the SRP elections that I'm sure you can still find online. I just thought she did a great job with it.
Now, last session, I was able to get a bill. It wasn't a bill that was passed, but I work with SRP to help democratize just the presentation, the information. It used to be you'd have to call up the SRP board secretary, a very nice person named John Felty, and say, John, am I an SRP customer? I mean, I'm an SRP customer. Can I vote in this election? And he'd look you up and tell you yes or no. I thought, if he can look you up, why can't we just do that online? This is not the latest and greatest technology here. And so it is much easier to find out if you can vote in the SRP elections now. And they are committing to sending a ballot in the mail that actually looks like a ballot and not just a regular mail, which just gets tossed in the trash. So they are making some attempts to make it a little bit more accessible. But of course, I was on the city council. If the city clerk came to me and said, we had a 2% turnout in the election, I would say that was a crisis in government and we needed to do something about it. But I don't think SRP really is concerned about increasing the turnout in the election.
That's for sure.
Amazing. Yeah. So I haven't been able to really watch the chat very closely, but I think we have had a ton of questions. So I am going to ask Sundrop, who has been compiling them, to pull some of those questions out and ask them. Sundrop, are you able to unmute and do that?
You guys have actually answered several. I think one interesting one was from some folks in Tucson saying people are interested in replacing TEP with a publicly owned electric utility, city or jointly city county owned. and are interested in what you guys see as the obstacles or next steps, or what they would need to do to be a publicly owned utility to counter the private corporations that own our utilities.
I think that would be pretty tough. I mean, I know there's, real interest in community solar, but there's been legislation that has really hampered some of that. And then the Corporation Commission too, I believe they would have to be involved. Am I correct, Stacey?
Yeah, I was just I don't think they're just talking about community solar. I think they're talking about taking over the utility.
Mhm.
And I know that I want to say I was just trying to look it up really quick because I feel like there was in Colorado they
Mhm.
had something, and for some reason I have Maine on my head, on my mind about that too. It it is not an easy task, especially here, I think. Not to say that it can't be done, but I think it would be, again, like TEP, who's owned by Fortis, is massive. You got, like, Fortis is massive. And so it would be I'm not saying it can't be done, but it would be really challenging. Um, Not that that doesn't mean you shouldn't dig into it and try. And I'm sorry that I can't remember off the top of my head, and I should know off the top of my head, as much as I say that utilities shouldn't be profit driven, because they shouldn't be, honestly. And I know that they have been able to do it in other places. Uh,
Mhm.
so what
Well,
It's
if
that
al-
you remember
like,
those links, send them to us and we'll put it in the follow-up email.
yeah, I almost feel like it would just be easy for somebody to bust open the Google and do it, but I know it has been done in
Mhm.
several states.
I mean, there is a potential for microgrid technology to take off and for microgrids to be approved, especially say for data centers or large campuses. But we're just not seeing the Corporation Commission being as interested in that as we might like. But ASU, I mean, leads the world in microgrid technology development. We should be able to do that as a state. We are the sunniest state in the nation, and we have such potential that we're not living up to.
Yeah. And this current CorpCom also um really kind of did things to set back community solar.
Mhm.
So, unfortunately.
And
So,
by the way, the Republicans Freedom Caucus is putting up even more conservative candidates to challenge Nick Myers and Kevin Thompson, because they don't think they're freedomy enough.
There's several questions which both of you touched on, but I think considering the number of question times this was asked, maybe I'll just ask it again, which is regarding public comments and kind of lobbying or advocacy with the state legislature. Um, what are your recommendations on when to talk to, or how to talk to the ACC as well as state legislators, and what to talk to them about to have the most impact on these issues?
Well, as far as the legislature goes, I mean, request to speak is important, and I always look to those comments and introduce them. It's important to come to commission meetings, committee meetings, so the natural resources meeting. But ultimately, with the securitization bill, Senate Democrats stayed strong. We all voted against it. I was really proud to hold the caucus together for that. But there were quite a number of Democrats on the House side that voted in the utilities interests. And so I think it's important to talk to your legislator and say, first of all, please do not accept any fossil fuel money. Do not accept money from the APS or SRP or TEP PAC. It's wrong. And please don't accept money from their government, their lobbyists as well. We don't want you to feel conflicted. We know money corrupts. And then when those bills come forward, to really reach out to your legislators personally and say, why are you doing the business of the utilities? I am utility or energy burdened, and you're adding to my energy bill. Why? Why? Please explain why. Because even if we got a Democratic majority, I'm not confident that we would be able to defeat some of these bills because we have a lot of very pro-utility Democrats.
I'll just add to, I think that uh, and I'll speak to CorpCom. I think that I think it's important to get things into the public record,
Mm.
especially with CorpCom, where there are dockets. Like anybody can file comments into the e-docket, but even showing up and giving public comment is important. And I don't want to say it's more important or less important or whatever, but I think it's important because you're putting things into the public record. And, a lot of those cases end up sometimes in litigation. And so just
Mm.
having a good flushed out public record, I think is really good and can be extremely helpful for things in the future. Like I know just even me personally, because I put so much into into different dockets, like it'll be helpful for me to go back and find things sometimes too. And Shelly just said Boulder. Yeah, I was thinking of Boulder, but I thought there was some place else in Colorado too. Sorry, I was just reading the comments.
Uh,
Uh,
So Stacey, I know you testify at the Corporation Commission. And not a lot of people do, is my impression. I could be wrong, but there's a question that just popped up. Are the meetings only in person? What is it like to testify down there?
No, it's not just in person. So you can do in person. The room has terrible lighting. I will pre-warn you. I've spent lots of hours in it. And now they have a new gate up to keep the people back, I guess.
Yep.
Um, but you can do it telephonically. You can I think they do like a web version. You do have to sign up. Um, Obviously before, I don't remember they've changed the parameters, so now you have to sign up further before than you did in the past. But it's a lot of people just call in or go online to do it. Obviously, if you're not in Phoenix. And the other thing with CorpCom too, and almost why it's easier to do it telephonically or online, is because like you never know when something is going to come up on the agenda. And so a lot of people can't just sit there all day long. And the open meetings are like always when the majority of people are working too.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, but I know in the past, like when I've helped organize public comment, we'll have a list of people and just kind of text people saying, hey, like it's time to call in. And then they'll call in. But
Mhm.
there's still, for how massively important that group, that body is, there is not enough engagement, in my opinion.
Mhm.
So, but it's because it's very wonky and it's very complex by design. They
Mhm.
make it that way. And the majority of people who are there are people who are being paid to be there on a
Mhm.
regular basis. So,
Well, we will look up the procedure for testifying, whether remotely or in person at the CorpCom, and we'll send that out in our follow-up email. And I will also be in touch with you, Stacy, after this to see when we can bring issues up and invite people to call in so that we can empower people to make their voices heard, which is what we love to do.
I mean, there's an open meeting next week and they're gonna jump all over energy efficiency on that one. So
Yeah.
that would be a
Well,
good
And in
one.
addition to following Stacey on Twitter and Blue Sky, and I, also recommend Autumn Johnson. She's the executive director of AirSea, the Arizona Solar Industry Association, and she kind of keeps track of energy Twitter. She's a really good commenter, and she's in the trenches every day on this stuff.
What is that name again?
Autumn Johnson.
Autumn Johnson. Okay. We will get her handles as well. So, is there anything, I know we've gone a few minutes over, and Stacey, I think frankly what you just said is a wonderful way to sort of wrap up the discussion. People need to be more involved. There are plenty of opportunities to make your voice heard. Now is a hugely, hugely important time to do that. I think people are paying attention to some of these issues, whether it's utility rates or sustainable energy or data centers. I mean, I think I always like to see what are the points of entry into this topic that will engage people, because nobody can do everything, but everybody can do something. So I think we've had a huge amount of engagement on this call, and people are, certainly very interested. Is there anything that we've missed or anything you would like to say to sort of leave our audience with some opportunity to speak up?
I would like to say, yeah, the Salt River Project, that the board seats and the council seats underneath the board, they're coming up. 5 of the 10 districts will have elections. There'll be 2 at-large candidates. If you're at all interested in running for a board or a council seat, please contact me at laurenkuby@gmail.com, and I'm happy to connect you and help you to figure out where you fall in the districts. Know that you have to own land to run for office. You need to own land within the SRP territory in order to run for office. So it's another anti-democratic feature. But if you want to get involved and help those candidates, it's enormously impactful. Those races are, there's not a lot of money invested, but this year there will be from Turning Point. But we have the opportunity to really win a majority for the first time ever. So it's an important race, a small but mighty race.
Mm-hmm.
And
Absolutely.
I just plugged in, so I had built a website about my APS battle. It's just stoptheapsgreed.com. Don't sign the petition, it's for an old rate hike. But if anyone's interested, like the battle history page, like the full, like for anybody who wants to get more involved, I mean, I think that will give you a lot of information. Like there's tons of, like everything is linked, and just to kind of get your head wrapped around kind of the history a bit over the course of that time of the commission and things too, that could be helpful for people. And I just want to say thank you to our senator who busts her butt more than
Thanks.
the majority of elected officials we have. She is one person who I truly believe walks her talk on a daily basis. And really, Lauren, I mean, you work your ass off. And so thank you.
Thank you. Back at you, sister.
Yeah.
And thank you so much, Civic Engagement Beyond Voting. You're so important to our dialogue and our political ecosystem.
Well, huge amount of appreciation for you both in the chat. This has been a really important conversation, and we are going to continue to follow all these issues. Please read our emails. We send them out every Sunday morning. They usually have a huge amount of information, actions you can take, important issues, some reading, some thoughts. So watch our emails, please, because we will be continuing to discuss this. It's just too important. So thank you both so much. Thank you everybody for attending, and you haven't heard the last on this subject. For sure.
And anyone
so much, Senator.
Reach out too if you have extra questions or anything. I'm very easy to find. Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Okay. Good night, everyone.
Good night.